Fever dog! Woo! Woo! Fever! Good dub. Ugly, but we found a way to win. Woo.
What happened in Atlanta wasn't just about basketball. It was about pride, retaliation, and the evolution of a team that had every reason to fold, but instead found its fire. Just 2 days earlier, the Indiana Fever walked off their home court after a brutal 91-90 loss to the Atlanta Dream. A game that didn't just slip through their fingers, it exposed every vulnerability they were trying to hide. Atlanta had pushed them around, literally. They won the rebounding battle, bullied them in the paint, and made their physicality the story of the night. Brittney Griner dropped 21 points with ease. Ryan Howard carved them up from every angle. And to make matters worse, Indiana couldn't hit their free throws when it mattered most. It wasn't just a loss. It was an alarm. But what no one realized, not even Atlanta, was that the Fever were already recalibrating. Coach Stephanie White saw everything she needed to see. "I don't feel like we match up well with them," she admitted. And just like that, the game plan was in motion. Behind closed doors, Indiana was already rewriting the script. In that locker room, something shifted. Not anger, not despair. Focus, determination. Revenge wasn't the word they used, but everyone felt it. They'd been embarrassed on their own floor. And now they had 48 hours to prepare their response. When the rematch tipped off in Atlanta, it was clear from the opening. Possession. This was a different Indiana team. The defense was tighter, the communication sharper, the energy relentless. Gone was the hesitation. This was personal. And the result? A complete reversal. Indiana outscored the Dream 46-20 in the paint. They limited Brittney Griner to just 5 points before she fouled out in the fourth. They didn't just win, they dismantled the very game plan that had destroyed them 48 hours prior. It was ugly, it was gritty, but it was beautiful basketball. And here's the part that makes the win even more impressive. Caitlin Clark had one of the worst offensive games of her professional career. No threes, not a single one. She went 0 for 5 from beyond the arc, something that hadn't happened since January 13th, 2022, back in her sophomore year at Iowa. She finished with just 11 points and picked up 5 personal fouls, which kept her off the floor in key moments. In the past, if Clark didn't carry the offense, Indiana lost. Period. But this game wasn't about her scoring. It was about her toughness, her leadership, and her willingness to stand up and fight when everything wasn't going her way. Because while Clark wasn't lighting up the scoreboard, she was setting the tone in other ways. Late in the game, tensions boiled over between her and Ryan Howard, who had spent the entire night trying to wear her down mentally and physically. After a hard bump, the two got in each other's faces. Cameras caught Clark staring Howard down and saying the words that would go viral within minutes. "I'm not scared of you." She said it without flinching, then gave her a sarcastic thumbs up. That wasn't just trash talk. That was a message. To her opponent, to her team, to the league. Indiana was done backing down, and the team felt it. That one moment lit a fire. The Fever responded not with words, but with plays, defensive stops, clutch rebounds, and buckets. That's what championship DNA looks like. When your superstar is struggling and still refuses to retreat, it gives everyone else permission to rise. And rise they did. Natasha Howard was unstoppable. After a disappointing performance in the first matchup, she erupted for 26 points on 12 of 17 shooting. She also pulled down 7 rebounds and was everywhere on the floor. In the third quarter alone, she scored 13 points, most of them coming when the team needed it most. She didn't just fill the gap left by Clark's quiet night, she owned the moment. That's the thing about stars. Real ones show up when everything is on the line. And Natasha Howard didn't just show up, she took over. Sophie Cunningham made her return from injury and immediately made her presence felt. 9 points, 6 rebounds. She hit her first 3 of the season and sparked an 11-0 run that flipped the game. She even drew a massive offensive foul in the final seconds, showing her toughness and awareness. Lexi Hull added 10 off the bench with 4 assists, tying a career high. Together, Cunningham and Hull turned Indiana's bench, which had been a weakness earlier in the season, into a weapon. They outscored Atlanta's bench by 16. That's not just depth. That's a blueprint for playoff wins. But the defensive scheme? That's where Coach Stephanie White earned her flowers. Knowing they couldn't match Atlanta's size head-on, she used chaos. Players rotated constantly. Double teams came from awkward, unexpected angles. It confused the Dream and disrupted their rhythm. Every time Brittney Griner touched the ball, she was swarmed. Nothing was easy. Indiana didn't care about fouling. They cared about sending a message. You're going to earn every inch tonight. Griner was frustrated, flustered, and exhausted. And with 3:38 left in the game, the strategy paid off. She fouled out. For the second time this season against Indiana, without their biggest weapon, Atlanta unraveled. Indiana's defense held them to just 36% shooting and out-rebounded them, 41-37. From losing the paint battle 40-26 just 2 days earlier to dominating it 46-20, that's not just adjustment, that's identity. That's a team that doesn't just learn from its mistakes, it grows from them. It's easy to forget this is still a young team. Clark is only in her second year. Boston is in her third. But they're playing like seasoned pros. Their chemistry is already becoming lethal. On one play, Clark threw a full-court pass to Cunningham in stride for a layup. Later, she manipulated the defense and found Boston for a game-sealing jumper. And while those moments didn't show up on highlight reels the way step-back threes or buzzer beaters do, they were the difference makers. Even with Clark shooting poorly, her decision-making stayed sharp. She didn't force shots. She created opportunities. She stayed calm in chaos. That's leadership. That's growth. And it's why this team keeps winning games most would expect them to lose. Championship teams aren't built in blowouts. They're forged in ugly wins. And this one was gloriously, beautifully ugly. The exchange between Clark and Howard wasn't just about attitude. It was a leadership moment. Clark's teammates saw her take a hit, look her opponent in the eyes and say, "I'm not backing down." That kind of moment echoes in the locker room. It lingers in practices. It becomes the standard. Clark showed she's not just here to make threes, she's here to lead. And the fever followed. Coach White leaned into the team's depth, using every tool at her disposal. She subbed strategically, using Dantas and others to body up Griner and disrupt the Dream's rhythm. She adjusted the defensive coverages mid-game and wasn't afraid to put pressure on with a full-court press late in the fourth. When it mattered, she trusted Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull to close. And they delivered. This wasn't just a coaching win. It was a culture win. The Fever are no longer a rebuilding story. They're a contender. And this game proved it. 4 players scored in double figures. The defense held Atlanta to 20 points in the paint. They made the Dream's home court feel like enemy territory. They won without relying on Clark's shooting. That's what contenders do. They find different ways to win. As the buzzer sounded and the players walked off the court, there was no celebration. No wild dances. Just focus. A quiet nod. They knew what they'd just done. They'd answered the call. They had proven that their growth wasn't hype. It was real. And they were only getting started. This wasn't just a revenge game. It was a turning point. A moment where a team looked its weaknesses in the eye and decided they weren't going to define them. A moment where Caitlin Clark didn't need to be the hero, because her team was full of them. The Indiana Fever are for real. And if the rest of the league hasn't realized that yet, they will, very soon.